Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
We made this.
Strange New Worlds has begun, and we are ready to dive in. I'm Mike Slamer, and you are listening to the podcast We Are Starfleet. Joining me in the studio today is once again the full crew, Ashley Thomas, Craig McKenzie, and Ian Buckley. Hello, everybody. It's good to have you all back here for this.
Hello.
Hi there.
Good to be back.
Folks, listen, if you haven't watched the premiere episode of Season 2 yet, I'm going to suggest that you drop out at this point, as we're going to go right into this. There's going to be spoilers. We're going to, break down this episode like we usually do. We're going to talk about how we felt about it. We're going to talk about what worked, what didn't, what Easter eggs there were or weren't. So, with that said, are we ready?
We are.
Let's go.
Born ready.
All right. We are beginning our coverage of the second season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds by discussing the premiere, The Broken Circle, directed by Chris Fisher, written by Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonso Myers. In this episode, a distress call from Lieutenant Noonien Singh compels Spock to disobey orders and take the USS Enterprise. This sounds really familiar, by the way. And its crew into disputed space, risking renewed hostilities with the Klingons in a bid to aid their shipmate. Ashley, I'm going to start with you. Overall thoughts on Strange New Worlds Season 1.
Strange New Worlds Season 1, I think, was a great, well-rounded first season. I won't say it was perfect, but I think it did something different from previous modern Trek series in that, once I got those screeners and I watched through them, I was just really taken aback by how much fun it was. I really loved what Discovery is doing. I really love Picard and Lower Decks, Prodigy. I've enjoyed all of it very much, but most of those shows have heavier overtones, or there's something, with the exception of maybe Lower Decks and Prodigy, because those are either comedy or more for a younger audience. But Strange New Worlds just has a lightness about it that I didn't realize I was missing from my Star Trek, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Love the cast. Overall, just had a blast with the first season, so very eager to dig in to Season 2.
Craig, going off of what Ashley just said, how did you feel about the Season 2 premiere episode picking up basically where we left off with Season 1 after a little bit of a time gap? Did you feel that everything coalesced and came together to remind viewers, like, hey, this is where we were, and now this is where we are?
I would say so, yeah. There's quite a bit of table setting in the episode. It spends some time reminding you of what's going on, what they're going to maybe do over the next couple of episodes. The Una trial thing is upcoming, so they remind you of that. They remind you about Spock's rage that he can't keep a lid on. They remind you of the Chapel Spock thing that's bubbling along in the background. So there's a lot of just anchorage of the previous season, and then it just gives you a story that kind of anchors back to Discovery as well. So it's doing a lot of looking back, but also giving you a flavour of what they're going to play with this season.
Yeah, definitely. Ian, when this episode opened up here with all the beautiful flyby, of course, the motion picture.
Yes. Sorry, it sounded like you were going to say more there. Yeah, absolutely reminiscent of the flybys that we got in the motion picture. And, you and I are Starship nerds going way back. So, I appreciated all of that. There is, to me, still, as I'm sure all of us kind of agree, a little bit less magic knowing that it's all computer animated. Like, it's very nice, it's very pretty, it looks nice. I'm excited to see these ships all gussied up and rendered in the best that current technology can manage. But it is a little bit of a, there's a note of falsity to it. I just can't help it. I grew up with watching all the actual models and the practical effects. So it to me doesn't have quite the same magic of knowing on some level that there is something physically actually occupying space that people actually built and painted and had to light in very specific ways and shoot in this very specific way to make it look like that. It's not that it's not impressive or pretty. It's just different.
No, I definitely, I can't disagree. There's something there with the real physicality of the actual models themselves. Ian, I'm going to stay with you. Between 1 and 10, 1 being we don't consider this Star Trek, and 10 being this is the most Star Trek thing I've ever seen in my life. Where has this episode fallen on that scale?
Okay, so not in terms of quality as an episode, just in terms of how Star Trek-y it feels. I'd say, for me, an 8. This show always has a Star Trek feel to me. I think because it does lean so heavily on a lot of the Trek tropes that we've become familiar with. It is leaning heavily on iconography established on the original series, the series that I grew up with, and so I think for that reason, it is, it may be, some may view it as a little bit cynical, but for me, it is largely effective, tapping into those familiar themes, design elements, colors, all the whole package. And I will say it does, I think, a good job of establishing its own new track 21st century take on those older stories that we've seen explored in the past.
Right on, right on. Craig, Trek tropes. Same question to you. General rating between 1 and 10, and also I want to pick your brain on those tropes. Go ahead.
Okay. For its trekkiness, yeah, I would give it an 8. It's very Star Trek. You could see this episode with a few tweaks playing out on some of the 90s, early 2000s stuff. You could almost see this as being an episode of Enterprise with minimal tweaks, possibly in the 5th season after the Klingons are more of a fixture, after their augment virus stuff. There's quite a few Trek tropes in terms of stealing the ship, the dressing down at the end, but we'll let you away with it this time. That's a massive trope. The distress call from a ally looking to get your help, all that stuff. There's tons of familiar elements here that will keep anybody that loves these things in Star Trek satisfied.
Ashley, I can see you nodding along and also kind of maybe furrowing your brow a little bit. Give the episode a rating out of 10 and hit me with your thoughts.
All right. I did enjoy the episode. Don't get me wrong. I'm probably going to give it maybe just a 7.5 or an 8. I think it's a good opener for the season. It's mostly just there to kind of set up some things that we've got coming down the pike, for want of better terminology, down the pike. How deeply are we going into spoilers right now?
Spoiler city, folks. Again, we haven't really gotten into it heavy, but back out now. Go ahead, Ashley. They've been warned.
All right. So I mean, we get the kind of some balls in motion of Pike leaves to go get help for Una. Spock keeps being referred to as an un-Vulcan Vulcan, or the Vulcan who acts nothing like a Vulcan. And so I feel like he's got some identity stuff that he's wrestling with. We also get a very ominous beep on a space map that says Gorn attack ship at the very end of the episode. So I felt like this episode is mostly there just to kind of set up everything else. It gets La'an back on the ship, and we get a little closure with Adriana, I believe is the name of the little girl she's been hanging out with. Is that right?
Yeah.
Ariana. Thank you.
Ariana,
I always mess that up. Ariana, who's effectively Newt from Aliens. So, I won't say I had a bad time. I just didn't feel like it was as interesting as what we've had before.
Okay.
So, I will say I do like that there are some calls back to, or I suppose really calls forward to things that we see in the original series that kind of gives some color to our characters. I'm thinking in particular of Spock playing the Vulcan lute, which we see him do in original series. And then Uhura coming into his room and saying, did I hear music? And, again, in original series, we see him playing and her singing with him. And so I'm just waiting for that to happen at some point this season. But anyway, I could go on and on and on. But for me, while there's a lot I liked, it just felt more of like a setup episode to me. I don't feel like it did a lot of extra.
Yeah.
And also, if I may, I just think it's funny that you thought I was furrowing my brow. Apparently, that's just my thinking face. So I guess I have one of those. I don't know. I can't do the Vulcan eyebrow raise. I wish I could. That would be cool.
Oh, yeah. I'm right there with you, Ashley. I think on my first watch, my partner and I watched it together. And we had the lights down. We put some of the accent lighting that we have up, and we had popcorn, and really kicked back and enjoyed it. And coming out of it, understanding that, this is a setup episode. This is really just reminding you where all the characters are and who they are and what they're doing on the ship. Nothing like Uhura at the communications station in the beginning of the episode, clearly saying like, "Oh, I'm in communications. I'm waiting for Hales." It's just in case you forgot who she was, right? Coming back on the second watch, I was like, okay, this is fine. This is fine. So I'm with you. I'm with the average here, 7.5, 8. It's a good episode. It does everything kind of well, but the only thing that really stood out to me was the Chapel and Mbenga story, and knowing that there's also La'an, knowing that there's some serious PTSD from the Klingon War, which doesn't really get talked about in this episode, but they put the cards on the table for you to pick up, So, okay, let us get into this. We talked about that opening sequence, the flyby of Starbase with the Enterprise in all her glory. I'm sure we all saw the single nacelle ship, the Kelvin class, if you will. It's good to see that Admiral April is back. Craig, we basically kick Pike and Una to the sidelines in this episode. Do you think that was a smart call for season 2, episode 1?
If you'll remember back to our trailer chat, I was speculating that this season, because they wrapped up Pike's major arc in the previous season, at least to some extent, this season may push him to the sidelines a bit and give the other characters a chance. And that seems to be what they're doing here. I'm not surprised that Una's hardly in it, because that was common in season 1. I don't know if Rebecca Romaine is just never available, but she's one of the characters that's been seen the least, actually, I think. So I think that's pretty standard, it seems. Maybe she'll have more to do as the season progresses, I don't know, but it certainly, in this, her being in a couple of scenes was pretty standard for me. But having Pike barely in the episode surprised me, because he had quite a prominent role in every episode last season. So maybe it suggests that, yes, this season's going to be, he'll be the captain, but the show won't be about him, so to speak. So yeah, that's what that said to me, at least.
Yeah, fair. Ian, it makes sense that we're kind of leaning into the ensemble cast a little bit here, and you've mentioned that before. How did you feel with the whole sequence that followed, where Pike is giving command of the Enterprise over to, mind you, Lieutenant Spock?
Yeah, it all works. I think it does make sense given what we were talking about when we were talking about the trailer, where this is much more of a show about the ensemble cast, about the crew as a whole of the Enterprise, and not just specifically about Pike and his magnificent hair. However, I think that for me, one of the things that I was missing a little bit about this episode, to go back a little bit about how we felt about the episode overall, I did feel a little bit surprised that it didn't really feel like the event that I have typically come to expect from a season premiere of a Star Trek show. And maybe that's just sort of thinking back to like classic Star Trek of the 90s, where, you know, season premieres were often events, or they were the resolutions of cliffhangers from the previous season. We got a bit of a resolution to how things were left off last season. I was a little bit surprised that we picked Lon back up quite so quickly after they make such a big deal about her departure at the end of last season. But at the same time, I'm really glad to have that character back so that we can just continue to have more adventures with her. I love the handover of command to Spock. I like the whole sequence that we get of him kind of getting comfortable in the chair for the first time. And I loved the sequence that was mentioned earlier with Uhura, where it's not just about her establishing for the audience her role as comms. That is her comms station. That is what she does on the ship, is comms. But also how much she has changed from where she was in the first season, where she was still getting hazed a little bit. She was still getting shown the ropes. And now she knows her station, and she feels very comfortable asserting herself and setting boundaries.
Yeah, there's a note that I have about a scene later on in the episode where the Klingon battlecruiser drops into orbit, and Uhura actually delivers some pretty good exposition about the communications that is coming from that ship. And she says it's all standard comm activity for arriving in orbit. And I thought that was a pretty good evolution of just, you know, the TOS era of hailing frequencies open, Captain, you know, to actually having a specific role and actually, you know, elaborating on it a little bit. Ashley, I personally loved everything that had to do with Spock. Famous last words, right? What did you think about the whole setup between, you know, obviously Pike says, nothing's going to happen. You're not even going to leave Starbase, to all of a sudden Spock is taking the ship out.
I really loved that. I think we're going to get, I mean, we said this in the trailer discussion, I think we're going to get a more emotional Spock this season. And by emotional, I mean a Spock that is trying to use more than just logic to make his decisions. So, you know, him saying, nope, we have a comrade in distress. We gotta go. We gotta respond to this somehow, and let's do hijinks in order to make it happen. And Spock Amok, I can't remember if it was him or T'Pring that said, "I don't care for hijinks," or maybe they both did. I don't remember, but I feel like that's kind of a Vulcan attitude. You don't really care that much for hijinks. But
yeah, there's
there was one thing I was wondering about the stealing the Enterprise scene, because it has this whole loyalty trumps protocol vibe to it, which is fine, but I wonder if a 10-episode first season is enough for us to believe that loyalty exists on the ship, if they're a close-knit crew in that way, because we haven't really spent an awful lot of time with them. If we'd had like a 26-episode first season like we used to back in the day, then in season 2 they're all like, yeah, we're the crew of the Enterprise and we're going to do this because one of our own's in danger or whatever, then you would have spent the time with them. You would have had the ancillary scenes where they're just being around each other and having fun and whatever. And in season 1 you get some of that, but there's not a lot of time to just build that. That's stuff that I feel like you can only build organically over an extended period of time.
Yeah, I think that harkens back to some of the discussions we've had about the challenges of building that kind of camaraderie organically over these much shorter seasons with much longer spans of time in between them. It just, for an audience, it requires a lot more, I think, context to get the sense of camaraderie that they're just expecting us to understand is present. I don't really know what the solution is to that. We're definitely never going back to the days of 26 episode seasons.
No, as much as I would love to. I think it's implied through like the dinner scenes, where Pike has everyone to his quarters and he's cooking for them. It does feel a little, it feels a little forced at times in terms of building the relationship. I think it was maybe episode 2 or 3 that they have Cadet Uhura coming in for dinner with the captain in his quarters. So agree with your assessment that it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of time. Ashley, are you also in agreement with us?
Sorry, on what? I'm sorry, I got distracted.
No worries.
Cut that
No
out,
worries.
please.
Do you feel that it has been that we have enough in-universe time, enough screen time with all of these characters, where the emotional Spock being so overt about stealing the Enterprise and leaving space dock to go rescue La'an, essentially, or come to her aid? Not that it's not that La'an is really a person who needs rescuing, to be fair, but to come to her aid. Are you in agreement that it kind of follows a logical sequence of events, or do you feel like it's kind of like, no, we're just giving you a story?
Thank you. Sorry. I think it's kind of hard for me to judge because I think I always have the menagerie in the back of my head. Because, obviously Spock was willing to do that for Pike then. And I think what we know of Spock, he's always willing to do something that might be.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say, your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
perceived as brash, but he can deem it logical. I mean, I think he did that a bit in the episodes we saw him in Discovery, where he's like, I know I didn't do this thing. I'm not crazy. I'm breaking out. So it's kind of hard for me to judge, just because I think sometimes I have difficulty separating what I already know about Spock versus only taking into consideration what we've seen.
Fair. I really like the setup to how this episode gets its plot going. The Enterprise is in space dock. It's undergoing refit. It's undergoing maintenance, and you've got the Starfleet technicians there making all these upgrades. And Uhura says, "We can't shut down this comm station, just in case. We never know." And suddenly a signal comes in. She's able to grab it. Turns out La'an, who's off planet, requires assistance from the Enterprise. So a plan is developed here to distract the inspectors, to get them off the ship, get away from space dock, and, go get this story underway. But before we do, we are introduced to a new character. Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about Commander Pelium, if I read it correctly?
Yes, Commander Pelia, played by the brilliant Carol Kane. She's she's definitely very what's the right word? Abrasive's not the right word, but she definitely isn't shy about calling somebody on BS, which she's like, I know exactly what somebody would do if they wanted to fake a warp core malfunction or warp core breach. They would do this. But I also know Vulcans hardly do anything without a good reason. So what's your good reason? And then she also takes into account that she knows Spock's mother. So I think from there we get like kind of a good flavor for her character. She's got a little bit of whimsy to her. She's almost got like a little bounce in her step. She's funny. I think with her, she almost has. We do know that she was a professor at Starfleet Academy, but she has like that kind of eccentric professor vibe. That's really fun. Yeah, I really like that about her, because you're never quite sure how to read her, and I think that's fun and adds a little bit of whimsy to the show. So I'm looking forward to watching her interact with our cast.
Definitely, Ian. Following Chief Engineer Hemmer, what do you think about this new addition to the cast?
I'll admit to already being a fan of her work, so I was actually pretty enthusiastic about the casting announcement, and having seen her in action, I still am very enthusiastic about it. I really like the energy that she brings. She's got this like very kind of like spunky, funky, very direct approach to her. She's got a little bit of that Guinan energy. She's this very ancient alien who looks exactly like a human and yet has all of this perspective from this centuries-long lifespan, and I like that element that she brings, and I'm curious to see what journey the character goes on in the season, but also the show as a whole. I don't know if they are kind of giving us a new engineer every season, kind of like Discovery has done with the captains each season. I just generally don't know kind of what the long-term plans are for her character, but if she's here to stay, I'm here for it.
Craig, as our resident Scotsman, what do you think about what Ian just mentioned here, if we're going to get a new engineer next season?
I think at some point they'll have to swap her out for Scotty, because he'll show up at some point, whether he shows up as a junior engineer or something like that. I'm just thinking about that Pike era book I read where Scotty comes on board the Enterprise for the first time, and he's a junior engineer, literally making hooch in the engine room. I'd like to see them tackle something similar to that in this show. Yeah, it could be that we just get a new engineer every season. It seems like Pelia is very I'll do what amuses me for a little while, and then I'll find something else. So it could be by next season she's bored of being the engineer in the Enterprise and wants to move on to something else.
Very well could be. Ashley, what do you think your thing would be?
Ooh, my
your thing.
I've been thinking of.
What would be your thing?
I've been trying to think about this.
It's a workshop,
Yeah.
you know? Like you can't pick, like I feel like you can't pick just one thing,
Yeah.
but somehow you gotta.
I think my initial knee-jerk reaction would be like, let's go, because that's what I always say to Mr. Nerdy Blogger when we're trying to get out the door and he's not going fast enough for my taste. So I'm like,
No, I get
let's
that.
go. So
Ian, what do you think about this? I mean, it's not played as comedy. It's kind of like a fish out of water moment, and everyone has a laugh about it, but everyone's laughing with, not at, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a great scene. It's a great scene. Craig, would you like the ship to go?
Yeah, don't like it when they're static. So yes, it should go. It should definitely be always going
Now.
somewhere.
Now. We
Right
head
now.
out to Kajatar 4 it's a dilithium mining planet somewhere on the border of Federation space. Naturally, there's a killer scene where we are reintroduced to La'an as the super badass security officer of the Enterprise, currently not on staff, but she's on the planet. And, you know, Craig, we talk about tropes all the time. The scene where La'an is drinking the Klingon under the table. I know it's a trope, but I still love the scene. How'd you feel about it?
I was fine with it, but yeah, it is that typical, let's show how tough our character is by upstaging an alien that we know to be tough. It's the throwing Worf across the bridge, isn't it, to show how tough the bad guy of the week is. It's a bit like that. But if you try and think of the logic of it, there's no way that would happen unless La'an is genetically enhanced and we don't know it yet. There was hints to that in season 1, but I don't think they're going to go down that route. I really hope they don't, because I can't be bothered with it. We can't have two secret genetically enhanced characters on the same show. That would just be redundant. But yeah, maybe she took an anti-intoxicant, because they mentioned that in Enterprise at one point. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of great
cheating.
world building scenes, and that opening sequence where we land on the planet is really good. Ashley, it really reminded me of, you know, we do a lot of like black market type scenes nowadays in science fiction. Like, you know, here's the planet, here's the seedy underbelly. Is it getting a little repetitive for you?
I wasn't too bothered by it. I really enjoyed La'an actually interacting with the Klingons. I think you get a good... we already had like kind of a pretty good flavor for her character, but it shows that La'an can cut loose just a little bit. Because previously we'd only really seen her moods, which are serious and angry. And that's it. So... here, well, I guess her third was seriously angry. There's that too.
Or there was entitled Bimbo Princess. But that
right.
was
But I think here you get to see that, she's got a little bit of sass about her. She can cut loose a little bit. She can have some fun. And I think the time with Ariana has been good for her. So even though, she's still kind of doing like covert ops, you know, by drinking with some Klingons under the table, she is still she's warming up as a human being. So I think some of the, I won't say that the PTSD is wearing off, because that's not what it is. It's she's learning how to better manage her emotions and how to not be afraid to form relationships with other people. I think it's cool.
Yeah, Craig, she really seems like she's at home. What do you think?
Yeah, I think she's probably at her best when she's knee deep in some kind of conspiracy that she needs to figure out. So it's a good fit for her. She doesn't strike me as the kind of person that's good at idling. she always has to be busy with something. So even if she's off on this self-imposed task she gave herself, she has to keep herself busy with something. So it feels like she kind of stumbled into this plot rather than went actively looking for it and then it took it upon herself to fix it.
Ian, we learn through this scene that the plot of the episode, the reason why we're here, the reason why La'an's here and called for aid, is because there's some war profiteering going on. Just to catch everybody up and remind everybody, there's a section of Klingons and a section of ex-Federation who found a lot of latinum involved in the whole Earth-Klingon war. So now it seems like there's a movement, an underground movement, to kick off the war again through a false flag attack. And according to Mbenga, there's a line here, 100 million death toll from the Klingon War, just on the Federation side. That's a hell of a number.
Well, yeah, and it makes sense given that we're talking about a scale of multiple star systems and two warring factions and weapons that are, have incalculable destructive power compared to the things that we have today. And it is huge. It's hard to believe. It's horrible, but I just said it's hard to believe, but it makes sense. But yeah, understandable why a man like him would not want to go back to those days.
Yeah, definitely.
Didn't Riker say in First Contact that World War III was 600 million days?
Yeah.
So.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Klingon War is not as bad as World War
Sure.
III, actually.
Yeah, fair enough.
Casualty-wise.
I often think about that. Like, is it strictly like, he said that its Federation death toll was 100 million. So of that, how many is Starfleet? How many is Vulcan? How many is Andoria? How many are Tellarite?
Right.
Go down the list. Is that all inclusive of the Federation?
One would imagine,
Or is
yeah.
Mbenga? Yeah. It's an interesting concept, but I like that they brought back, to Ashley's point earlier, tying into the events of Discovery. Like it's staying the course of the overall consistency and continuity of Star Trek, at least in this era so far. Let's talk a controversy for a second. The Klingons. Since we're talking about Discovery, continuity, consistency, prequel era, who wants to go first here to talk about how they felt about the visuals of the Klingons? Just jump in.
I think that they, in this show, mark a pretty good compromise between the kind of classic 90s era and a look for Klingons that is updated and looks like it belongs on this show. And I think that while I don't have a problem with the sort of radical redesign that they did with Discovery, I think that was an interesting take. But I think that this is more in line with what the majority of fans had in mind when they imagined Klingons in a 21st century Star Trek series.
Totally fair. Ashley, I see you have something to say.
So, for a series I've been doing on Fangirlish, while we wait for, or while we have been waiting for Strange New Worlds to come back, I've been revisiting the original series Star Trek movies, and I was very surprised to see in Star Trek the Motion Picture that those Klingons got head ridges.
Yeah, that was when they got them.
Yeah, so I had never noticed that before. And so I had remembered it being a big thing in Next Gen when the Klingons showed up and they had head ridges and things like that. So for me, if as long as I can recognize that it's a Klingon, it's fine by me. I really am not bothered in the slightest. And so I didn't even notice, as what Ian pointed out, that, oh, this is like some kind of nice in between the Discovery Klingons and what we get in the original series. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, just look like a Klingon to me. So, but again, you guys are much longer steeped in Star Trek lore than I am. So your mileage may vary.
Craig, what about your mileage? Does it vary?
I wasn't bothered by this version of the Klingons. They looked like Klingons to me. I like to see a bit of variety because, well, humans look very different depending where you're from. Why not Klingons? We might get to see some ridgeless Klingons at some point because there should be a lot of smooth foreheaded Klingons kicking about in this time period. But yeah, it's fine. They're Klingons. I'm not bothered by whether they have ridges or not, whether they look like the Discovery ones or not, whatever.
No, I'm right there. I mean, I appreciate that they showcase like different styles of forehead ridges. A couple of points, if you pause, you can see that the ridges aren't necessarily directly centered. Sometimes they're off center, or they kind of swoop upwards as opposed to just be straight out. It's interesting, and it shows diversity. A bulk of this episode has a lot to do with M'Benga and Chapel, and they are very quickly separated from the group to go assist said Klingons. Somewhere on Kajatar 4, this mining planet. Ashley, I'm going to come to you here. The sequence that follows, where Chapel and M'Benga essentially get kidnapped, right? We can see that there's some struggle. M'Benga has some recollections of the Klingon War. He's clearly dealing with something. When they are brought to the medical bay on wherever we are, if it's the ship or if it's inside the mining planet or not, and he's working up some Klingons, there's some very tense things happening here in terms of the conversation. What were your thoughts on this?
We've got 2 doctors who, assuming we still take the Hippocratic Oath in the 23rd century, have sworn to do no harm. And here they're put in a situation where they must do harm or they will die. So what do? How can a, ordinarily built human take on a Klingon? Well, apparently you give yourself some sort of drug. I just finished Babylon 5 about a month or so ago, and so my thought was, oh, the doctors are taking stems. I was talking with a frequent We Are Starfleet guest, Brandy Jackala. We were talking about this the other night, and she kept calling it super soldier serum, and then we settled on super soldier stems, and so it's some kind of in between. So, but what I really like,
I also wrote down super soldier serum.
What I thought was especially interesting here is I felt like we got through the Klingon War somewhat quickly with Disco, but we don't really see the individual stories of how these events like impacted us and things like that. And so you get some insight into how M'Benga and Chapel had worked together before, how they have tried to get to work past that unfortunateness that they had to experience, the horror of war. So, they're left with a lot of hard choices, and it's difficult, but what I like about it is you get a greater depth to their character.
There is, it's uncharacteristic, I believe, of, I would say, a Star Trek episode to go so directly into what I would consider to be a fairly violent sequence of scenes. Ian, what is your take on the overall aesthetic? Blood dripping from Mbenga's mouth, Chapel's getting punched in the face, she's throwing elbows.
Yeah, I really liked the additional color that we got on their past, their relationship. Really got a sense of the fact that they are a team going way back. Like this is a good example of, even though we haven't had that many episodes with these two characters, I think that what we've gotten from them through the writing, through the performances so far, and through, this episode in particular, we're starting to get a sense of that shared camaraderie over time. So I will have additional buy-in when they ask us to invest in their relationship further on down the line. I liked the action sequence. I thought that this whole, the stims to make you into a super soldier short term made a lot of sense. It felt like a very, doctory, science-y solution to this problem of, well, there's a whole bunch of Klingons who are stronger than us that we have to get through in order to get out of this situation. So I bought into it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good addition to their characterization and to the lore of the Star Trek universe.
Craig.
We've got some potential here with the who fought in the war and who didn't, because if you remember in season 2 of Discovery, Pike mentioned that the Enterprise had been kept away from the war. So because they were too far away or something on their mission. So there'll be people on the ship that weren't in the war. We hear from the trailer that Ortegas was doing stuff during the war, so you have to assume she wasn't on the Enterprise at the time. Plus, she isn't at the end of season 2 of Discovery, so maybe she's a relatively recent addition. Mbenga only just came aboard at the start of season 1 as well, although he knew Pike from before. So there could be a bit of a contrast between the veterans and the not veterans. If they play with that at some later point, they don't here, but it is in there. In terms of the super soldier serum stuff, I thought that was fine as a concept, but I would have liked to see some kind of negative consequence of it after the fact. Because when it wears off, it just wears off. It's not that it makes them ill after they use it or something like that. I would feel like for something like that, there would have to be some kind of come down that is not pleasant and therefore ramping up the necessity of using it, as in, what it does on the other end. Are you sure? Are you sure this is the time to use this? Otherwise, why not just use it all the time?
If I may, it looks like a potential effect of this super soldier stim, or whatever you want to call it, is loss of control or inhibition, because we see Mbenga about lose it on this Klingon they're trying to get information from, and Chapel has to say, we can't get information from him if he's dead. And so I feel like maybe once you take that whatever it is, it makes it really difficult to come down off that high once you get going. It's like this big adrenaline spike or whatever, and kind of like I've read in stories. I don't know how accurate this is, as I've never been in the military. I've never had to fight in a battle or anything like that. But there's something called like bloodlust or whatever.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from, with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Okay, round 2. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
where once you get into this mode of having to constantly fight or defend yourself, it's very difficult to stop. You could be in a place where you've cleared all your enemies or whatever, and if a friend comes up behind you, you might turn around and stab them or shoot them or whatever. So I have to wonder how easy it is for them to come down from this. And also, if I may say, as a Marvel fan, I'm a big fan of the fights in enclosed places. I think this is about as close to Daredevil hallway or Shang-Chi bus fight as we've ever gotten in a Star Trek episode. Happy to be corrected if I'm wrong about that. But that was my immediate thought watching this. It's like, oh, we got Daredevil hallway and Shang-Chi bus fight. I'm so excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I just had to pause
you could
here.
accomplish that. You could accomplish that bloodlust thing without the serum. So I think I wanted more from it. I wanted to, a range of impact that it might have on people, because it seemed like they took it. They were heightened for a bit, and then when it wore off, they were fine. So it just seemed like a bit of a catch-all solution.
Yeah, I think maybe the short duration, because it looks like it wears off Chapel significantly quicker than it does for Mbenga. But I do have to wonder if maybe, it did wear off of Mbenga, and, the last remaining minutes of him, plowing through that hallway full of Klingons is just that pure bloodlust that Ashley mentioned. And I had to pause it right here on our screen to get this pause image of Mbenga stalking the hallway, to come to the aid of Nurse Chapel as she's being harangued by a couple of Klingons. And it's I gotta say, I'm right there with you, Ashley. That enclosed hallway, that Daredevil kind of a fight, this is awesome, and it's not something that we've seen in Star Trek before. The whole sequence, I think, really works. It does ask the audience to hey, come along for a fairly violent ride. But following that, they do escape into the airlock, where, as we know, if your back's against a wall, maybe the airlock is not the door you want to go through. Could be pretty dangerous. So, story continues from there. The Klingon D7 battlecruiser finally arrives. Ashley, the visuals of this stuff is super cool. Knowing that you just watched the original series films, you've seen the D7 in its original action. What do you think of the update?
Honestly, all ships look about the same to me. So I'm afraid, friend, while I'm all like, wow, that looks cool, I am far less discerning about what ships are what. So I would love to hear a little more from you guys who are super nerdy about all the ship models and the classes and things like that.
Yeah, Ian, I think that sets you up perfectly.
Yeah, it was curious to see. It was like they kind of kit bashed this ship at a glance. It looked like they took the saucer section from the Crossfield class and put on. I don't know. At first, I thought they were going to kind of do an updated version of the Miranda class, maybe. That's kind of what it reminded me of a little bit with the nacelle configuration. But yeah, interesting. I don't have a problem with it so much, other than it seemed like that they identified it right away as a Crossfield class, which you can tell just by looking at it. It doesn't look anything like Discovery.
Yeah, that kind of took me out for a minute, because
it bumped me a little bit in a sequence that it just felt like it's a minor thing, and it's certainly not going to bump everyone, obviously, but it just felt like a little bit of a sloppy choice.
Fair. Craig, what do you think? I mean, Star Trek Discovery is pretty much a tentpole series for modern Trek. Why would they get the class name wrong?
I've no idea, although I think there's previews for it in this era of Star Trek where they just play fast and loose with the classes. For example, they refit the Titan, turn its nacelles the other way up, and now it's a Neo Constitution class rather than a Luna class like it's
Well, it's a
supposed
different
to be.
saucer too.
Stuff like that. So, yeah, well, I suppose. In which case, it's a different ship completely, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, they have played fast and loose with the whole class situation. But my Star Trek canon is when you have a ship that's of a class, when another one shows up of that class, it looks the same. Maybe you have some minor details that are changed, although you wouldn't in the old days.
The same model.
The Excelsior model that they'd
Right.
use all the time. They would never make any changes to it. But like, for example, when you had the second NX class ship in Enterprise with Columbia, you could see it looked a little bit different because it was a CGI model and they could make tweaks to it quite easily. And I wonder why they came up with effectively a new ship for this, because surely the information for the CGI model of Discovery is kicking about, so it could have just been a Crossfield class. Then you would have got to see the Enterprise blowing up Discovery, which might have been fun. That could have been the source of many fan edits.
Oh my gosh!
Good. Can you imagine?
Boo.
But I'm not saying it's a crap episode because they got the class name wrong.
No,
I was in the
no,
middle
no.
of it and I was like, that's not Crossfield
if I
class.
may,
Stop saying that.
Now, has not La'an been bartering with these Klingons for Federation tech, things like phasers and things like that? So,
Yes.
does it not stand to reason that she's maybe passed along the odd ship part or something like that that could have contributed to, as Ian aptly put it, this is a kit-bashed model of a Crossfield class and some other stuff.
Yeah, I got the scene pulled up right here, so I'm going to turn the volume up, guys, and...
And none of us can hear it.
Crossfield class, right? That's what she said?
You know, when this actually airs and we can turn on subtitles, we can be sure. But yeah, it looks like a Crossfield class saucer smack dab on top of a different superstructure and pair of nacelles.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it has like a Crossfield transponder still. Like maybe that's the thing. It's like, okay, that part of what was salvaged from the Crossfield class, so that's why it reads as such. But it also is like, look with your eyes. It's very different.
Yeah, true. The whole crux...
Well, the thing is, if they had actually used a Crossfield, it could have been a nice little character beat, because the last time Spock saw one of those, it was when he was losing his sister forever. So it could have been a moment of, oh God, this looks familiar. Or he hesitates before giving the order to fire because he has that, he makes that connection in his brain, stuff like that.
Yeah, or just say like, you know, I don't recognize it. You know, parts of it from different ship. Just acknowledge the difference in the show. Again, it does feel like a little. It's not a major thing, but it is one of those things that's like a pebble in your shoe in an otherwise good sequence. It just feels unnecessary to add that kind of confusion, mistake. I don't really know what to call it.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. The nice thing about this, though, is that it really propels the action sequence that we're about to get, where this ship, the Kit Bash Crossfield class, whatever we have, is en route to get into a fight with a Klingon D7, supposedly to reignite the Earth-Klingon War. So the Enterprise, thankfully, hiding in a asteroid field of some kind, cannot be seen, kind of figures all this out, has been talking to La'an, who's down on the surface, trying to negotiate. Meanwhile, on this Crossfield class, don't forget, Mbenga and Chapel are still trapped in that airlock, and they know the ship is in motion. They know things are going to happen. There's a big sacrifice moment having to come up here. Ashley, I personally thought everything that transpired through this was thrilling, exciting, enjoyable, and just makes for damn good television. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any nitpicks?
No real nitpicks for me. I think that anybody else, or maybe not anybody else, but if this weren't a Star Trek series, everybody else would be like, well, I guess we're dead. Versus Mbenga and Chapel are all like, well, we're definitely going to die if we stay on this ship because they're going to blow it up. But if we jump off, we might delay our death by approximately 1 minute. And then, in that 1 minute, that's all we've got for them to save us. So they're willing to take that very, very minuscule risk in order to, effectively stop a war.
Yeah.
And I admire that kind of courage quite a bit. So, is it a wild and crazy idea? Absolutely. But I just watched The Search for Spock the other night, and I was thinking about the line that McCoy says to Kirk. He says, "You've taken death and given us another chance at life," or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact quote, but it's another kind of a Hail Mary sort of crazy idea like what we've got here.
Yeah. Craig, when it comes to tropes, there's one EVA suit pack oxygen tank left. What do you think? Jumping out of the airlock is a good call. It works ultimately, right? But in this sequence, how'd you feel about it?
I think it was practically the only option they had that would get them rescued, because the Enterprise knows they're there because they received the signals. So there's a chance that they're being actively looked for, and if they get away from the ship, then they can lock onto the signal and beam them aboard. So that's the chance that they're taking, and you're going to be dead either way, so you might as well do the one that has a slim chance of your surviving. So, yeah, I can't say that I would have done anything differently.
Fair enough. Ian, in the midst of all this, the stolen Kitbash vessel is firing every single one of its photon torpedoes to get away from the Enterprise that's currently chasing them. The whole action sequence is very, and forgive me because I know you've got a Star Wars pod, but it's very Star Warsy.
Oh, for sure. It's very pew, 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 rapid fire, very kind of J.J. Abrams, Star Trek reminiscent. Just, it doesn't feel quite like the big, slow kind of capital ships that these things kind of are, firing a torpedo, or two at a time, and then having to reload it, and then firing when it everything. Especially, Ashley, you mentioned you're watching the TOS movies, and in those movies, you really get a sense of like that Enterprise. Like, she's beautiful, she's big, she's not like super fast, like whipping around asteroid fields and like blasting off like photon torpedo after photon torpedo. It's this kind of slower, more stately pace of movement, and you get the sense of it being like a battleship on the old seas having to manually reload cannons, as opposed to being this very, like you said, Star Warsy, rapid fire, quick kinetic action scene that we get. That said, it's a fun scene. It's fine. I think this is just what Star Wars looks like these days. You can either enjoy it or you can keep having problems with it. I guess, everyone's mileage is going to vary. For me, I'm kind of, I just kind of accept it.
Yeah, I always see it, like I'm like, okay, that's happening. That's not something I necessarily expected. But for me, if it serves the purpose of the story and it makes me smile and I have fun, then I'm kind of okay with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that, there was a certain amount of, we needed to demonstrate that this was a quick, matter of time. Like, time is of the essence. You can't have a slow battle of maneuver and positioning at this point in the story. You need something that's going to move quickly and resolve quickly and dramatically, and it does.
Yeah. It does end quite dramatically. I did have to pause our playback here on this scene of Spock. Ashley, emotional Spock. How
That
did he
man's
get
got
this
real
way?
tears.
How did he get this way?
Well, first of all, props to Ethan Peck for conjuring up some real tears here. But he just thinks he's killed Chapel, the woman he's already having big emotions about. Not to mention his good friend Dr. Mbenga. So yeah, the man is, as they say in the 2009 movie, emotionally compromised.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, the visual effects of the ship being completely destroyed in space. Obviously, we know there isn't really supposed to be fire in space, but I accept it. We have a transponder signal, and out of nowhere, well, not really out of nowhere, they're beamed onto the Enterprise. Ice, they're frozen, near death experience. Craig, I was also emotionally compromised during this whole scene, even though I knew that it was gonna be okay.
Is it because you've seen the original series and know that those two characters are in the original series?
Whoa, no spoilers, Craig. Come on.
Spoilers for a 60-year-old TV show. Yeah, dearly. Yeah, I thought it was an effective moment. It was good seeing Spock just really opening up emotionally. It was a callback to earlier in the episode when he was getting some medical tests done, and the Vulcan liar soothes him, so his heart rate goes down. Chapel walks in, his heart rate goes up. That tells you about the conflicted feelings he's having. Plus, he talks about them as well, in case you didn't get it from the more subtle approach. But yeah, I thought that scene was a nicely done one where he was begging for her to live.
Mm-hmm. Ian, what was your takeaway from that scene?
Yeah, I love the emotional shades that we're getting on Spock as far as who to blame. I guess blame Amanda. I think the the playing up in this era of Star Trek of Spock's more human side and his human impulses are again kind of in keeping with the version of Spock that we saw in The Cage, where that was a much more expressive version of Spock. And I think that they're kind of taking that and running with it. And frankly, I don't have a problem with that. I feel like that's kind of in keeping with canon that I feel like comes across as sincere and actually allows for a wider audience to engage with this character.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good moment for us as viewers to remember. I've said it. I probably said it in the trailer chat. I will probably say it again and again on this podcast. But as you just mentioned, Ian, we are getting an earlier version of Spock. This is Lieutenant Spock. This is not Ambassador Spock. This is not Captain Spock. This isn't even First Officer Spock. This is a young guy who is, experiencing the world firsthand in a totally new way. One of the few Vulcans in Starfleet. And in the following scene, we get to see him kind of doing his own cowboy diplomacy here. This is 100% the scene where Spock negotiates down with the captain of the Klingon battlecruiser. They go to the planet's surface. They have this wonderful sequence where they share some blood wine together. 100% something Kirk would do. Craig, I loved how this episode kind of culminated itself with the conflict. Did you feel that the wrap-up was in line with what Star Trek would do?
Yeah, I liked it, and it was very original series as well. I liked that the Klingon captain wasn't taking it too seriously. It was more I guess we have to go to war now because of what was happening here, and then Spock explained it, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. Let's just have a drink and sort all that out, whatever. I do have to question the logic of the Klingons not being able to detect the Enterprise, which is right behind the ship that they can detect, that they can see firing torpedoes at something, but whatever. That's just one of those things. But the wrap up and the yeah, let's not quite break bread together. Let's down a barrel of blood wine together and forget all about this. It was a nice diplomatic thing. I don't know that the governments will admit to it ever happening, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that it served as a good, I like where we ended things in this episode for these characters who were the main focus. We you mentioned that you could sort of see Kirk having this moment that Spock has at the end of this episode in the original series, and I agree. I think that this is, again, like we're fleshing out these characters. We're still only in the early days. We haven't even had 15 full episodes with all of these characters yet. Like everything that we're seeing is new information that we're getting about who they are as these roles. And I think everything I learned about these characters in this episode, I was glad to have learned. And I'm excited to see more of this development in the future. I did, like Craig alluded to earlier in the episode, I enjoyed the trope at the end of Spock being dressed down and then, okay, make sure this doesn't happen again, which of course we know it will. And I think it's again, like we get a lot of foreshadowing, so to speak, of what's going to happen in the 60-year-old TV show in this series. But yeah, we get that Spock has now done this thing, and so we know now when he does it again, the gravity of that decision, his past that's being filled in by this series, is going to color some of the decisions we see him make in the original series. And I think that's pretty cool.
This episode kind of leaves us out here on more of a somber down moment with Spock, whereas he just successfully prevented another war from starting. He, drank with the Klingons, their version of breaking bread, if you will. He's emotionally compromised throughout all of it, and he's going through it. So he visits sickbay, visits with Chapel, and Ashley, I think that this kind of storytelling is really, really good, like really gripping for a lot of audience members. It's something, that humans can innately relate to these emotions. Ethan Peck plays it brilliantly. Where did the final scenes take you on your emotional journey with the emotional beats?
With the emotional beats. I'm all about those emotional beats. I felt a lot of empathy for Spock's situation. Feeling conflicted I would rather feel like extremely sad or extremely angry than extremely conflicted. And that's exactly where Spock's at there. Because obviously he cares for Chapel as a friend, and maybe more than that. So
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
the idea of losing her in his life is not something he relishes, and also feels loyalty to Prang, and feels like he's maybe betraying her in some way, and it's a tough place to be, to be to the point where he can't even describe what he's feeling to M'Benga. That's tough. That's a tough place to be.
Yeah. Craig, what are your thoughts on the final sickbay scene?
I liked it. Like I said before, I do like the more emotionally or viscerally emotional Spock that we're getting in this series. And the fact that he's going to... I'm still not sure what they're going to do here, because I am viewing this as a bit of a reboot of the original series rather than a prequel, because they've already strayed away from quite a lot of what the original series was like in terms of these characters. Chapel in the original series, I couldn't imagine juicing with some strength-enhancing drug and fighting Klingons with her bare hands, for example. It's just not something that version would do. But so I'm fine with it. I'm fine with them blazing their own trail in terms of the relationships and Spock's emotional state and things like that. It's possible that he'll end up centering himself and closing himself off more emotionally, and maybe it will end up being a consequence of all that, the rage he let out during that Gorn encounter. The idea that in order to get away from that, he has to, push everything so much further down than he would prefer to. But we'll see. But like I say, as far as I'm concerned, this is effectively a reboot.
Effectively a reboot. Ian, are you in concurrence with Craig's estimation?
I mean, we've talked about this a fair amount offline.
Mm-hmm.
It's clear that they are treating some of this as essentially a soft reboot of some of these characters. Like they're hewing close to canon when it suits their purposes, which again, it's fine. We do not need to be religiously beholden to the way things, storytelling, what anything was done 60 years ago. Most things that were being done 60 years ago, we shouldn't be doing anymore. So, none of this is to say that this is a criticism or a quote unquote bad thing about New Trek. But I think that it's a valid observation that there is an element of kind of soft reboot with this show. They saw that it was an opportunity to do that, and they're clearly taking it. I mean, all the stuff with the Gorn, I mean, it's clear that they're going in a pretty specific direction with the Gorn and that lore, and that's all them just deciding that the background with the Federation and the Gorn is just different than it was when they were making TOS, which is fine. They weren't thinking about these things when they were making that show back then. We've got to stop being fixated on like the ways in which it's different than the past. As long as they are changing things in ways that aren't completely wild and are still telling good stories, I don't really mind.
Yeah, if you were beholden to canon, then the Gorn wouldn't be in this at all, because no one had ever heard of a Gorn on the Enterprise when they encountered them in the original series, including Spock, who saw them face to face. So yeah,
that is perfectly reasonable. This episode, we all agree, solid 7.5, 8-ish out of 10. I think after talking through it with you guys, it still makes sense to me to give it that rating. Yes, a few small things here or there, but was there anything specific, and feel free anyone to jump in here, that we specifically did not care for? Like was like, oh, I didn't like that. Any thoughts?
One thing that I picked up on was after stealing the Enterprise, there was no real mention of that being any trouble. They already told April where they were going even. So there could have been some line about, oh yeah, we had to do some stuff to evade detection or whatever. Some kind of sense that Starfleet was looking for them, because they just get away with it. And I don't believe that April would just be sitting there saying, let's wait for them to come back and deal with them later. I feel like he'd be, right, get a ship out there, follow them or whatever.
I don't know if I completely agree, just because of the setup of like, no Starfleet ships can appear in that system while the Klingons are having their turn. So like, I can imagine a decision being made of, well, if one ship showing up is bad, 2 is going to be really bad.
Maybe try to catch them before they get there or something.
Yeah.
Some kind of sense of we're being followed and we have to evade our pursuers or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I completely agree. I think it probably would have made the episode a little busier than it necessarily had to be, because I feel like there was already a lot going on the planet.
I guess you solve it by Spock not telling April where he's going or where La'an is.
Sure.
And they sort of figure that out en route or something like that. So then you get the Enterprise is gone and we don't know where it's went. So we're just going to have to wait till it gets back. or hope it triggers some kind of detection net somewhere.
Could have been an opportunity for our new engineer to come up with some sort of techie solution for the problem of how to evade Starfleet once they leave the system, or the Klingons for that matter, or both.
Yeah.
Fair. Okay, so I'll ask the other end of the spectrum of that question. What did you guys really love about the episode?
For me, I think getting these deeper character insights was probably the highlight. Not only are we getting Spock wrestling with his emotional conflicts, but we get a better insight into Mbenga and Chapel's friendship. We get these little one lines that tell you so much about how our crew works together. Like Ortega's telling the inspectors, like, yeah, I configured these controls this way because I don't like getting hit. You learn so much so quickly. And then even Officer Mitchell, who, we've not really seen much of her, and she's the one that goes and sets off the fake warp core breach. So, we get so much from who these characters are in just very small little snippets. And for me, I really enjoyed that. I felt like I got to know everybody better, and that was fun for me.
That reminded me, Ensign Mitchell. That's a familiar name.
Yeah, I don't think that's...
I'd be very surprised if they did a Gary Mitchell connection. But maybe.
It's more of a
maybe.
Kirk's circle of friends type thing, so I think it's probably just a coincidence.
Fair enough.
It'll be a bit much if it's, oh yeah, she's Gary Mitchell's sister, because
we'll see.
Is. We already have enough convenient siblings kicking about.
Right. Yeah. How many people do we need to be related to other people we have from lore? I don't need one more. Mm-hmm. I felt like Sam Kirk was pushing it right up to the line. I'm done now. I don't need any more.
That was the original.
Right. That was enough of a buy-in. I'm good. I'm full up on coincidental.
What if there's a gender?
I mean, they could again. Like if this is a radically different conceptualization of these characters in this era, like anything is possible, I guess. I'll never say never, but I'll say no thanks. I'll certainly say no thanks.
One thing I'd like to point out that I really liked was that they brought up the Klingon War again, because if you look at season 1, it seems like it was largely forgotten about. No one seemed to be that impacted by it. There wasn't the sense that the Federation was licking its wounds after a costly and brutal war, that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying this episode goes into the detail of, yeah, this is how screwed this Starfleet was after this war, but at least there's some mention of it. There's some consequence of it that we get to see play out to some degree. I'm glad they just didn't forget about it.
Yeah, agreed. And I like the war profiteering angle. I thought that was a clever and very Star Trek kind of thing to, kind of a villain to have. And I thought that the Mbenga Chapel relationship was a great thing to explore in this episode. I liked the exploration that we got of Spock's emotional development and his challenges, and the moment that we got with Uhura at her station where she's showing how much she has changed from the first season, I thought was great, as was the little note for Nichelle Nichols at the very end of the episode.
Well, and the fact that some Klingons don't like the fact that they lost and they want to do something about that.
I think there's a good opportunity for them to set up Commander Kang in this season if they are going to follow some kind of, to correct your point about some Klingons don't like it. I wonder if they might follow that thread a little bit. Ashley, you were going to say something.
I would rather be spending time getting introduced to new characters and getting to know new characters versus every single thing having to connect back to something pre-existing within the Star Trek universe. Sure, those Easter eggs are fun. They're interesting. But for me, it almost creates a barrier to entry for new Trek fans. And sorry, I'm not a gatekeeper. And I don't want people to feel like they have to watch all of Star Trek in order to watch Strange New Worlds. I want this to be...
I don't think that's what they've done, though.
Yeah, no.
Do you feel like that's what they've been doing? Because I feel like they've struck a pretty good balance.
I think it's been pretty well balanced, but I will say when we first had information about who our mains were, or at least the info I was given when I was getting... Because I got to interview the cast of Strange New Worlds for Fangirlish. The little brief snippets that we got, like, I knew we were getting Uhura, we were getting Spock, Una, Pike, characters we already knew, and then we were getting Chapel, who we also knew. We were getting Mbenga, who was in like 2 episodes of TOS, so a character that's had very small amount of screen time, but was still a legacy character of some sort. And then you connected La'an to Khan. And they had to be like smirking when they're like, let's name her La'an. So somebody will yell La'an. But like the only like 100% totally no connections, like at least apparent connections with anything in original series or anything else was Ortega's, which is part of the reason I kind of gravitated towards her, because I'm like, oh, this is a new character, like pretty fresh. And there's since been some stuff released, like in some of the initial drafts of the original Star Trek pilot, there was an officer, Ortega was described as a fiery Latin young man. And so, but I mean, the only commonality they share is the name and the heritage. So, this was my one big gripe with Picard is, want to boldly go, I don't want to cowardly rehash. And while I think Strange New Worlds has done a good balance of that, I let's move forward with Trek. Like, come on, let's tell new stories. Can somebody please tell a new story here?
I feel like we're getting some really solid new story that's like filling in gaps that the original series kind of left open. We're getting more character development. We're getting, deep into the backstory of Spock, of course, who is one of the most storied legacy characters outside of Jean-Luc Picard himself. So, to your point, Ashley, completely agree. Let's do new things. I don't want to keep rehashing the old. But Craig, you were about to say something.
Yeah, most of the legacy characters in the show are practically blank slates as well. Pike only had 1 appearance. Una had only 1 appearance. Pike had a bit of character in the cage, and Una didn't really. She didn't do much. And you could count Bruce Greenwood Pike, but he's a completely different person and doesn't have to be anything like this Pike, so you can disregard that. Mbenga, 2 episodes of the original series, there's nothing to go on there. Even Uhura, there's nothing to go on. Chapel, well, they've thrown out what they had with her in the original series and come up with their own thing. So the only character you really have that built-in knowledge of is Spock, because everybody else can just be whatever. Because, let's face it, the original series, it had 3 main characters, and everybody else was just whoever. They were just supplemental, side people for the most part. So, yeah. So I don't think this show has that problem.
I think all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of us are excited to see new shows and stories and, of course, characters. But it's funny because, Ashley, to your point, it sounds almost like... my takeaway is almost the opposite of what I think you're saying. It seems to me like it's a bigger problem if you are very familiar with Star Trek coming into the show being like, oh my God, we've already seen all these characters before. Can't we get something new? Whereas someone who doesn't know Star Trek like us will come to the show. These are all new characters to that person. So it's almost like anti-gatekeeping, and anyone who's coming into the show cold is going to see all these new characters and be like, okay, these are all new characters to me. Whereas we're all like, man, they are name checking a lot of familiar names here. Can we get some new ones in the mix, please?
We all know Sam Kirk is basically nothing more than that gag in the first episode of the series. He's done basically nothing since.
He's a gag and a mustache.
Yeah.
That's what he is.
He's the what's the name of the dude from Galaxy Quest with the mustache?
Guy.
That's right. He's just Guy.
Just Guy. Hey, Guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He's definitely gotten that comparison a lot on Twitter, and he's like, yeah, I'll own that.
No, I love that. And shout out to Sam Rockwell, because also Sam Kirk, right? Ian, I am going to bring to you the last word here. How excited are you for the rest of this season?
I'm very excited for the rest of the season because, well, I enjoyed the first one, and like we talked about when we were discussing the trailer, this show feels like a lot of fun to watch. There are stakes that matter to these characters we've come to care about, and that's our investment in the show. We don't necessarily need some universe-ending cataclysm, some threat to the Federation as a whole. It seems like they're going to kind of keep the Gorn in the mix as a kind of long-term big baddie. We haven't really seen anything from them so far, so maybe they're saving it for later on in the season. I don't really know, but it's clear that they are keeping them kind of in the mix in our minds, and I'm fine with that. I think they're an effective baddie, an effective villain, and I like the episode of the week storytelling. I think that they are leaning into some well-worn but still welcome Star Trek tropes, and very excited for the rest of the show. I wish the premiere had a little bit more pop, a little bit more impact for me. It just came across as a good episode and not necessarily as we're here kind of announcement to welcome the season as a whole that I was maybe expecting out of a season premiere.
Ashley, how are you feeling about this season of Strange New Worlds?
Very optimistic. I think the last season was the best all-around Trek seasons we've had in quite a while. I really love all these characters. I love this cast. So I am excited to see what sort of paces they put through this season. I think it'll be a good time.
Craig, what about you? Are you excited about this?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they throw at us. I like the episodic stuff. I always think that Star Trek is at its best when it's episodic because the serialized approach hasn't really been all that inspiring up until now, because usually you're about halfway through an arc and you're like, God, when is anything going to happen? When are we going to start building to a resolution here? So yeah, I like it when they just go do something, finish it off, go do something else. And let's give us character continuity because they're all in the same ship, so they should remember what happened last week. So yeah, I am keen to see what Trekkie type stories they're going to throw at us. What are they going to project on that LED wall they keep raving about?
Based on this episode, it really feels like we are going to have an enjoyable ride. We're going to be laughing. We might be doing a little crying. But overall, this is what good TV is. And I'm so grateful to have Star Trek back on air. Folks, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of We Are Starfleet. And remember, we are a part of the We Made This Podcast network. We are all on the network. Ashley, why don't you tell us a little bit about where we could find you?
If you want to connect with me on social media, you can hit me up on the tweets at The Nerdy Blogger. You can like my Facebook page, facebook.com/The Nerdy Blogger. You can follow me on Mastodon. I'm at The Nerdy Blogger at mastodon.social. You can read my words on fangirlish.com. You can also read them on my blog, nerdyblogging.wordpress.com. And you can hear those words being read on the Sci-Fi 5 podcast, which is 5 minutes of science fiction history, 5 days a week. And aside from here on We Are Starfleet, you can also hear me on Podcast 616, which is our Marvel podcast on the We Made Podcast Network, covering all things Marvel, MCU, Marvel adjacent.
Craig, where can we find you on the network?
So mainly, well, outside of the network, on the network, you can mainly find me here. I'm guesting on various things. I recently did a stint on Podcast 616 talking about Spider-Man, which is what I seem to do. Whenever Spider-Man is being discussed, I will be there. I won't be far away. But outside of the network, you can find me on Neil Before Blog. So that's neilbeforeblog.co.uk. It's an analytical review website. I'll be reviewing this show. I'll be still reviewing Superman and Lois, and I'll be reviewing Secret Invasion when that comes on. And there's an attached podcast where we discuss much of the same things, monthly news podcast, and there's some upcoming deep dive episodes coming there. So that's mainly that. And on Facebook and Twitter, it's just Neil Wolfer Blog. Type it in, you'll find it. Personally on Twitter, I'm under Nemesis4909, which, and since I'm on a Star Trek podcast, is not originally a Star Trek reference. It was originally a Resident Evil reference, but then later became a Star Trek reference. So I've fulfilled my obligation. I've said that, and now that's me.
Ian, other than We Are Starfleet, where can we find you, sir?
So as you previously mentioned, I do have a Star Wars podcast that occasionally updates called The Way. I also have, it's in between seasons right now, but Illumination Above All is our podcast breaking down each episode of the Apple TV series Severance. And you can hear me pop up as a guest elsewhere on the network, Movieversaries. I'm a frequent guest on with Bo Nicholson. Sometimes I'll pop up on Podcast 616, although it's been a while. Other things too. You can hear me, just search for Ian Buckley on the various shows on the network.
Amazing. Thank you, team, for joining us for Season 2, Episode 1, The Broken Circle of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Folks, please subscribe if you haven't already. Give us a rating and review on any good podcasting platform that you may listen to us on. And if you're so inclined, feel free to help us out on Patreon, patreon.com/WeMadeThis. My name is Mike Slamer. You can follow the show at Starfleet Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And Star Trek's not all we're discussing, so we'll give you a taste of what you might have missed on the network in just a moment. Until next time, hit it.
Are you a fan of the Marvel Universe?
Can you tell your Kang from your Doctor Doom?
Well, if so, boy, do we have a podcast for you.
Podcast 616 is the We Made This Network's long-running Marvel podcast, and it's under new management.
We're your hosts, Ashley Thomas
And Hugh McStay.
And together, we are going to lead you every step of the way through the Marvel Cinematic Universe's upcoming multiverse saga.
Everything from She-Hulk to Avengers Secret Wars will be covered on the podcast in the kind of detail that would make a Wikipedia article blush.
We're going to have some detours into the wider Marvel world where we'll look at non-MCU projects dating all the way back to Marvel's origins in the groovy, funky 60s, and all the way up to the birth of the greatest franchise in cinema history.
And we'll be joined on our adventure by a roll call of guests so impressively knowledgeable that they'll make the Avengers themselves look clueless by comparison.
So if you like your opinions sharper than Wolverine's claws,
or takes hotter than the Human Torch's underpants,
then get Podcast 616 in your ears as a matter of urgency.
You'll love it 3000.
Podcast 616.
Disassemble.